Hey, welcome to another episode of the Icarus IDE'er. So great to have you listening in again to another episode. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We are talking to a student team, and we're going to try to find out what an industrial design engineer can add to the student team. And luckily, we found out that it's a lot more than just the stereotypical, well, you can design the posters. So, hope you enjoy and let us know what you think. Hey, welcome back to the Icarus IDE'er. As always, my name is Joris, and I'm here with this time 4 people. So we have 2 guests today.
Yes.
And Bram, will you, as always, do the introduction of our guests?
Yes, as always, I will do that. So, durability. This is a term that we as designers got used to over the last few years. And it will also be our goal to design products that don't have a large footprint. Now, we can do this in packaging or in cars. Maybe a small hint to our coming month. But you could also start doing this in the housing market. Because if our numbers are correct, and I think they are, then 40% of all our Dutch waste comes from the construction sites. And this is a number that we can improve. And one group that's already tackling this problem is Team CASA. It's a student team that tries to create sustainable livings or sustainable housings. And we were curious how that works. And especially how we as IDE'ers can play a role in this. So that's why we invited Joline Frens. She was a board member for CASA 1. And we invited Camiel Mourisse, who is a board member right now and also responsible for the architecture of CASA 2. So welcome, Joline and Camiel.
Hi, thank you.
How are you both doing? Yeah,
doing great.
nice.
Sorry.
Let's just start at the beginning. Do we call it Team CASA or Project CASA? It's Project CASA, right?
The team is called Team CASA, and the projects are called CASA 1, CASA 2, hopefully someday CASA 3.
One day.
Well, shall we start with CASA 1 then?
Yeah.
It seems like a
spoil
logical
what
choice.
CASA 2 is.
Yeah. What I saw from the website is that it basically feels like the house of the future. It's sustainable in every possible way. It is not a, I don't know what you call it, net zero energy house, but it does generate almost all its energy by itself. And it's prefab, it's recyclable, it's easy to manufacture. That's like what we're talking about when we're talking about CASA 1, right?
Yeah, so if we were talking about CASA 1, it might be interesting to get our ground point, because what we said is we wanted to make a comfortable, affordable, sustainable alternative to housing. Comfortable, affordable, sustainable alternative, that spells CASA. So that's a nice fun fact for you
Now we know the name. Yeah.
Okay.
to take home.
Yeah.
So those are the things. And what you say, it's the house of the future. We really don't hope it is. We hope it's the house of, well, we want it to be the house of yesterday. We hope it's the house of like very, very soon. Not the far future, because what we're doing, it's possible now. It's possible, feasible now, and we need to do it now because we don't have the future to act if we don't do anything now. So it's the house that's possible now. And it seems futuristic because the built environment, unfortunately, is a sector where innovation doesn't integrate very quickly.
Fair enough.
So that's why it seems very futuristic, but the technology that we're using is basic.
Yeah.
Only
I
not-
can imagine that the construction industry has quite a lot of inertia, of course. It's quite a lot of, and you mentioned it in your mission as well. Like, we want to accelerate energy transition, and then there's a whole lot of stuff, but it ends with this can be achieved with technologies available today.
Yes.
So you don't have to do that much of ridiculous, far-fetched innovation. Everything should be possible now already.
Yeah, and if I think about the CASA 1 project, because the CASA 1 project is a social living house that also will be rented out eventually for social living prices, none of the technologies we have thought of. The only thing, the smart thing we did is we combined them.
So I imagine you're just sitting with a bunch of students together, all from a different discipline, and just throwing in new techniques, or not new, but existing techniques that they don't use in the construction site yet.
Yes, and also if sometimes they do exist in a construction site, and the most evident example of this is the energy system, which is always a part of when I talk about CASA. It's the energy system because it's so smart that and like not to brag because I didn't come up with it. Some smart people from our team came up with this, but there are 3 technologies that were just combined, and that they were not combined before is ridiculous to the extent that the partners that we have are now also partnering together because, like, yeah, we just gotta do this. But basically, we have a roof, and that's energy generating. And I'm saying energy generating because it both produces electricity and heat. So it's 2 types of energy. You have to somehow overlap the summer energy towards the winter energy need. So what we do is we have this roof, and it produces electricity and heat. And that is the input that a heat pump needs, because a heat pump works most efficient if it has warm inputs from which it can create hot water.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Warm inputs, hot water. Makes sense.
So if we have this roof with the perfect ingredients for a heat pump, then we have a heat pump. Now we're using a DC heat pump because a roof creates DC electricity because the sun shines constantly and it doesn't blink.
Yeah.
So that's also more energy efficient. And then we have a lot of hot water and a very big potential to create hot water in the summer. But you don't want hot water in the summer. You want that in the winter. So what we do is we have a very, 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 very big tank of water underneath the house where we just store this heat until 80 degrees. And when it's winter, we use the heat and we use it in the house. And heating is a very big and inefficient energy usage in houses. So if you can just store that in water, it just saves so much energy. And since we store it in water in the Netherlands is not that, doesn't have a big environmental footprint because we are in the Netherlands. And of course, this would be a different story if we were building a house in the Sahara, but we're not. We're building it here where we can drill a hole and we have water.
Fair enough.
And water is cheap. Water is way safer than a battery. Yeah. And it's quite efficient if the tank of water is big enough. And I said really, really big. It's about the size of a floor of a building.
Yeah. It's 100 square cubic meters, 100 cubic meters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. For the people that study industrial design in Enschede or in Twente, it's, I think, the similar concept as the Horst building has, which is like a huge, deep pool, which cools the building in the summer and heats it in the winter, and it's
yeah, that sounds similar.
Yeah. Now, Camiel, I'm curious about you because we've heard a lot of Joline with CASA 1, and it's all in the past.
Let's update.
What about the future? CASA 2, let's get it. You said it was about a supermarket. Do you simply extrapolate what Joline's just said to a supermarket, or do you do more?
No, first of all, because of a supermarket which has very different problems. So for housing problem, like the main energy consumption comes from heating the building. With a supermarket, actually, it's the cooling that's using the most electricity. So in some way, we need to find a system that solves that problem. So it is related to each other, and now we have to find a kind of way to design or to come up with some genius combination as we had with the STES, but then for the refrigeration system. But yeah, there are a lot of other things which makes a supermarket special as well, because with a supermarket, there's not only the potential to do something sustainable with the building itself, but there's also something you can do with what happens within a supermarket, with the consumer within the supermarket. So a lot of CO2 emissions come from the building itself, but it's also in consumption patterns. What do people do with waste, food waste? There's also packaging waste, which is a huge problem. And now we're now in the conceptualization phase. So we have to think what can we do within this supermarket, and think of how, with the building design, or maybe even interior design or other things that we can do within the building to stimulate for these sustainable changes, sustainable behavior. So that's basically the challenge right now, to come up with some very great concept for what we're going to do.
Cool. Well, what I'm wondering about is, how are you going to realize this project? Are you just going to hand over your blueprint to a contractor, and what happens after that? Because are you just going to run the supermarket by yourself? Are you gonna get in contact with a supply chain like Albertijn or Jumbo that wants to work with you?
Yeah, so in principle, it's the same as with the CASA 1 building, as in we need to find also a contractor and other suppliers, people who want to work with us that will aid us in our design. But in addition to that, indeed, we have to work with a supermarket because, we as a student team won't run the supermarket after we build the building. That's not the case. So we definitely need someone to work with. But also, supermarket can also bring a lot of knowledge about it to us. So in that sense, it's also really necessary to collaborate with them. Yeah, so that's what we need to do. We need to convince some supermarket to work with us.
Let's go.
Yeah, so if a supermarket CEO is listening right now,
Yeah. For all the supermarket CEOs are listening, just a DM. CASA.
info@teamcasa.nl.
How did you end up at Project CASA? How did you decide to do a student team and then specifically this one? You go first,
Yes.
Joline, since you were there when I was a toddler.
Yeah, so we have a very different story. So maybe that's as well very interesting. I joined in my second bachelor year, and I joined because in TU Eindhoven, because maybe it's important, Team CASA is a student team in TU Eindhoven. There is this honors program, and within the honors program, what you can do is either do types of competitions or join teams. And mostly smaller teams are possible to start there, so you get your entrepreneurial spirit. And Team CASA is one of the teams that started there, and I joined 1 year after it was founded. I joined the energy transition track, but we were also active in the smart cities track. And there, Team CASA started. And I think after my year, they said, yeah, you're big enough right now to be a normal team. You don't need the honor support anymore. So go and be a normal team now. Good luck.
Oh, that's
And that's
pretty
how
cool.
I ended up there. So through the system. And Camiel actually didn't end up through the system. So that's also very interesting.
All right, so Camiel, how did you end up? Because you are now a board member of Team CASA. Team
correct.
CASA Project 2. How did you end up at this student team?
Yeah, so I joined a bit later than Joline. By that time, it was officially already a student team. So for me, I was doing my previous study that was sustainable innovation. And it might be a bit relatable to industrial design because it was a very broad studies and I didn't really know what do I want to do. So therefore, I decided to go a bit more practical and join a student team. So I had already some connections within Team CASA, people that I knew, Joline, for example. And therefore, I joined Team CASA. And actually, being in the student team also inspired me to change my course of studies. I changed to architecture. However, I first joined Team CASA also as an external affairs member, so doing the communication. And now, with a little bit of experience from that part of CASA 1, I'm now currently a board member who works on the second project, and now also as an architect within that project.
Nice. Interesting to hear you say that you changed or you altered the course of your studies, because about 2 days ago we had an interview with Koen van Ham from IDE'er, which is an episode that we're going to release, I think, in a month.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually gave us the advice, go do a student team, because then you will realize what kind of purpose or role you are good at or you are interested in. And it sounds like to you, joining Team CASA has had an effect that he suggested it would have, that you realize I need to do something else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you start to think about like exactly what you're saying. Like, what are you good at, and what gives you energy to do things. Like, and then I realized like, okay, maybe architecture is suited better for me than what I did previously. So yeah, definitely,
Right.
it definitely has that effect.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
It's nice to hear that the advice we get in our episodes actually makes some sense.
Yeah. It can apply to people.
Yeah, kind of chill. All right. Now that I think we have quite a clear idea of what Team CASA does and what the projects CASA 1 and CASA 2 are, Joline, you have studied industrial design. Camiel, you haven't, but at least you're in the design department of the project. So we'll allow you to think with us here. Let's have a look. Let's say Bram and I, if we wanted to be part of this team, what our added value as an industrial designer could be. And maybe then it's a good idea, like we discussed, to start with what kind of roles industrial designers have already had in Team CASA. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
I think one place where industrial designers have been very dominant in the past is the science communication part of the project. So then you're going to talk about PR, communication, and pitches, and poster design, such stuff. And that might sound very typical. Oh, let's give the designer the PR role, but that was a very valuable thing because how I just explained the energy system to you, someone who designed that energy system had to explain it to me, and I can make it understandable for the general public.
Yeah.
I also was at the Dutch Design Week and was able to, I don't want to say dumb it down, but make it comprehensible.
Translate it.
Yeah, for people that don't
for
have
the
any
normal
knowledge
people.
about buildings and technologies. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to dumb it down, you could say, yeah.
Yeah, or at least make it a little bit more concrete. So very much the science communication and the pitching and the getting partners and the social side of this project, I think we have been super, super valuable. Other designers, the first initial designer was actually when the project first started. And she was also just part of the project description, getting a vision. She was very, very much a part of the visionary part of the project. So their industrial designers are also very valuable because they know how to set goals.
Yeah.
And how to, get everyone along. And then we also had an industrial designer, and what her role was when we were kind of finished with the project, and we're like, okay, but we want to know how could we make this more sustainable? Someone who would just analyze everything and just make kind of a report about it. And that was another industrial designer. So that's quite broad.
Yeah.
Then if I look at what I did the board. So I had a lot of managerial positions. I did HR for a while. I was responsible for most new members.
Mm-hmm.
I made a lot of decisions, and also a big part of my responsibilities were partner acquisition. Also because I was able to explain to, for example, the facade finishing partners what the rest of the project was about. Because you want to say, I want a sustainable facade. Like, okay, what's in it for me? Like, oh, you're in this very, very cool project, and this is why it's cool. So to have the overview of the whole project, that was a very important part. And also to help members stick to their planning. So taking accountability and making sure other people take accountability in their planning. Because, of course, in our studies, we do projects more often.
Yeah.
And it's projects on a different scale, because for us, at least, projects tend to last 16 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And this was 5 years. But still, you need to have deadlines on a weekly basis. That's the same.
Yeah.
So being accountable that everyone finished their projects. So being through a few projects in your study really helps student teams in that sense, that you know what a project is. And it maybe sounds very stupid, but because you know what a project is, you already have value.
Yeah.
So really the overview of the whole project, the spider in the web, as we've probably mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I like how that spider in the web can be, let's say, capitalized on in different ways. So you understand a lot of what is going on in the project, but you can use that knowledge and that capability to either become a science communication person, to extrapolate the vision to a more futuristic and visionary idea, maybe. You can use it for partner acquisition, you said. And well, you have to understand the whole design if you want to make a good analysis of the sustainability. So it's interesting how you that let's say it's a bit standard. The industrial design engineer is a spider in the web, but you can use it in a lot of different ways that you just mentioned. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very standard, but unfortunately, it's true.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's a negative thing though. Because, I mean,
it's like this thing you hear a lot on all open days, like, oh, you're the missing puzzle piece between all that, but it's true. And it can be said. They were right at your open day.
Oh wow, the people at the open days, they know what they're talking about? Dang.
Yeah, I know. And then this last thing that I also did, for example, was when people had to make decisions and I just didn't know how to make that decision. And sometimes I had some knowledge just from being in a team for a while. We would help them, but sometimes I would also just help them with giving the tools on how decisions are made. Because what you see with a lot of other experiences is that in their final reports of courses, they're like, these are the options. But now you had to choose one of the options.
All right, but Camiel, how do you? I think you can find yourself in what Joline has just said. How do you view this as let's say, the head of architecture for CASA 2? What do you think could be the value of an IDE'er in your team?
Yeah, well, I think, like, in my eyes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in my eyes, industrial designers are like people who can really solve problems. Like, they look at what is the problem, what can we do with it, and they come with a result that actually would solve this problem. And I think with other studies, I mean, of course, we all do this a bit, but I think I have the feeling that IDE'ers could really grasp the core of it for some reason. I feel like that is really something IDE'ers do in their courses as well. So I think that is really interesting for a team, and certainly also in this phase where we are collecting a lot of ideas. And I mean, what is it actually what we're going to do? How can we solve these problems that we identify on a more practical basis? And also what we just talked about, there's a lot of uncertainty. So how do you choose the best solution? So I think IDE'ers can be really valuable in that.
Yeah. I guess, again, if you understand all the different aspects of the project, you can make a better decision if you have to outweigh different aspects of your solution.
Yeah.
If you have to make a comparison. All right. So, shall we do a case study? We have well, about 5 minutes left. You want to do a case study with Bram?
Oh, damn.
We can do like an open application from Bram to Team CASA.
Oh, damn. I'm not prepared. I don't have my resume with me, but let's give it a shot.
So usually how I start off these conversations is I would tell you a little bit about the team, but considering that we just did that, I would skip that for now.
Okay. Clear. Next.
So I'm going to base this interview on how CASA 1 was set up, because probably CASA 2 is set up a little bit different, but I'm just going to go at it.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe Camiel can interrupt if he thinks. All right, cool.
All right. So what we think it's important is that once you join the team, that you focus on something that you're interested in, because you're doing this beside your study. You're not getting any study credit for it. You're not getting any money for it. So you gotta do it because you like it and you want to have the knowledge. So what I want you to explain to you is the different options that you have within the team.
Yeah.
We have 3 different sub-teams. I'm looking at Camiel if that's still true.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And those sub-teams are team technology, team building, and external affairs.
So, Bram, which one are you interested in?
Ooh. Well, seeing that we already have a podcast, then the external affairs would seem like a logical option, of course. But I'm also really interested in, I guess that's the building part. Well, if I look to myself as an IDE'er, I'm not really the drawing type of IDE'er making really beautiful things, but more the analyzing things and life cycle analysis problems or safety problems.
Is that something, could Bram as an IDE that likes life cycle analysis and safety analysis, could he do something in CASA too as well, Camiel?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. I mean, life cycle analysis is basically assessing if what we're doing is the good thing to do, right? So
Yeah.
so something like who does that is always like very welcome to critically examine what we're actually doing. So yeah,
Right?
I think that seems like a perfect fit.
Yeah. All right.
Let's go.
So when can you start?
How about this afternoon?
Don't steal my second host.
Yours, I'm sorry. I found something
No,
else.
don't. No.
Right. Yeah. Well, it seems like there are a lot of options within Team
Yeah.
CASA.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think we have not even scratched the surface, because this was what, from our experiences, IDE'ers can do. And what I can also say from our experience is that ID people are diverse as hell. So they could probably do more than I just explained. I know ID people who have a specialty in Internet of Things. Well, we haven't even started thinking of what they could do with that specialty. So don't think that you couldn't do anything.
No.
There's so much room to do stuff.
I'm also glad to hear that it's more than make a nice poster or be the PR that makes the videos and stuff. Like that's
It's
also
also
cool.
that.
Yeah, also, but there's a whole lot more that we're apparently capable of and that we can be valuing. So I'm quite happy with that. That is actually the honest conclusion of this conversation. That's pretty cool.
Alright. Yeah.
Right.
Shall we then
Hit us with that final question, Bram.
All right. So this is for both you, Joline, and for you, Camiel. What would your advice be? Well, I guess for us, me and yours, or everyone listening.
I think my advice would be like, if you have some specific interest, then go for it. And if you haven't really found that yet in your studies, if you're still looking for what to do, then just try something out, like I did for Team CASA, and maybe join a student team, and then you get to know what you think is interesting and what you can go for. So
Maybe
that would
it's
be my main
also-
advice. If you don't know, take action and go on.
Maybe to nuance that, it doesn't have to be a student team. And of course, we both joined a student team, but I know my partner started working in his second year, and he also learned a lot from that. That's maybe an important note. We are not here to push student teams on everyone, because some people are just not student team people, and those people are still valid.
Yeah. It can also be like an internship.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
example.
or a podcast,
definitely.
or
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a very, I agree with that advice. Based
yeah,
on-
maybe another advice is, if you don't like something, just don't do it or voice it, and make sure you can change your situation. Because a lot of us stay within a certain track because we are expected to do it. And I guess both me and Camiel had the experience where we switched studies.
Yeah.
And that's an option. And I know a lot of people in my year who just continued the masters because they didn't think about it, and both in ID but also in other masters. And they just did it because what else are they going to do? Explore other things?
What? Exploration?
And that's maybe another advice. You're not stuck in whatever you're doing right now. And just because you're studying ID or mechanical engineering, because Bram's mechanical engineering friends are listening, or the CEO of the supermarket that was also listening, you can still explore other things. And especially probably your audience is quite young. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes open all the time.
You can go into the build environment. That's not a problem, even though it's not a product you can pick up like most of the things we design.
Yeah.
You actually can. Yeah. All right. So to round it off, I've got a list here of 6 already possible functions of an industrial designer. I'm very glad that that includes more than just the PR and the visuals and the aesthetics that the stereotype would maybe suggest. So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm very happy with what came out of this conversation. So with that, I would like to end the episode. If you listened to this and you made it this far into the episode, let us know what you think. Let us know if you have plans of doing a student team and what kind of role as an IDE'er you want to have in that. So maybe it might be cool to share with all the Icarus idea listeners. And leave a like, leave a comment, all the basics. Leave a DM. Joline.
Yeah, how can you reach Project CASA?
Ah, yeah.
So we
Camiel.
have a Instagram, a Facebook, a Twitter, and a LinkedIn, and an email address. And they're all pretty straightforward. Our email address is info@teamcasa.nl. The Twitter and Instagram is teamcasa_TUE from TU Eindhoven. And Facebook and LinkedIn is just Team Casa.
All right. We'll put them in the show notes as well. Joline and Camiel, it was really nice talking to you. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, and thanks for the nice conclusion. I'm very happy.
Yeah, and thank you for having us.
Inviting us.